says it's streaming now.
Yes, we are live. Hello, you guys. Those of you who are joining us and catching us right from the start, so glad that you are here. I know that you want to be able to learn how to tutor online. Lots of people have lots of different kinds of questions. They want to know how to get students. They want to know what tools to use. And today we're specifically focusing on the topic of how do you teach online? And really to have this conversation, I thought it'd be really cool to be able to invite lots of different people with lots of different perspectives. So we've got a math tutor, we've got a science tutor, we have a writing tutor, and we have myself who is a reading tutor in the mix here to be able to guide us through the conversation. And while you guys are in here, I want you thinking about all of the questions that you specifically have about tutoring online and how to tutor online. So definitely ask those questions as you come on in, and I am going to be responding to them. I have my handy dandy little phone over on here. Also, I want to be able to welcome you guys on in. So make sure to put on in who you are, what you tutor, and where you live. We always like to know. I always like to put on a map for myself. Like it's my own little GPS of all the tutors and where do people live. I like to keep that all organized. So tell us who you are, where you're from, what you tutor, and then any questions that you have about how to specifically tutor online. And I'm trying to bring it up. There we go. There it is. And awesome. We've got Patricia in the house. Hello, Patricia. So glad you can join us. And Kathy. Woo!
Hi, Kathy. Hi, Patricia.
And we've got Anne. So, you know, some of you guys, you already have lots of experience with how to tutor online. So feel free as well to add on in there if you've tutored online, as well as not only what you tutor, but what are some of the things that you do to be able to tutor online as well. I think it would be really cool to add to the conversation inside of the chat and get things going there. So first I'm going to introduce you to Alan. Alan is an amazing tutor who he started off doing a lot of one-on-one in-person tutoring, right, Alan?
Yeah, that's right.
And now you've moved over to mostly doing online tutoring?
I'd say about 80 to 90% of my students are online now. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And so when you were starting to make the decision of moving online, what are some of the things that started going through your mind? What are some of the questions that you kind of had?
Well, the biggest concern I had would have been, I was pretty good with technology, so I didn't have a concern about me being able to find a whiteboard and show my work. My biggest concern was not being able to see the students' work or how they approach problems or how they're looking at it. And so I had a little bit of concern on that, and I wanted to try it out. So when I first started, I just tried out with some agencies that just had online tutoring just to see if I could make it work and if it worked well. But yeah, that's the big thing. You can't see their handwriting necessarily because they may or may not have a tablet or they may not be very comfortable with it. But I just wanted to try it out. But the biggest thing for me was I wanted to be able to tutor during school hours. You know, when my kids are in school, I don't want to be idle. I want to be able to have students. So I wanted to reach college students. I wanted to reach students at different time zones. Mm-hmm. And I am fortunate enough to live relatively close to a university, but going into Seattle, University of Washington is a big school, a big tech school. But going into Seattle is a huge amount of traffic. I didn't want to really head into the city to do all of that, deal with that commute. So I was really looking for online to target students for different time zones for me.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was looking for as well, because I also have a family and started off with three very little ones. They are now all grown. Not grown to adulthood yet. They're still in the home with me, but middle school, high school. So, but I wanted to be more present and not have to work every single evening of every single day and then all weekend, right? Because I wanted to be able to work 40 hours a week. And so that's definitely a reason to be able to come on in and be able to do this. And so did you end up, when you started teaching math online, did you end up using the same exact resources that you used with your in-person students?
For the most part, I say usually I followed what the student. So when they come to me, like they usually are not that. They have specific needs. They have specific topics that they're struggling with,
Yeah.
and specific courses and curriculum. Because at this level, like they have pre-calculus, they have calculus, or beyond, and they have specific assignments or specific tests that they're preparing for. And so I typically follow their curriculum. Because in the beginning, when you're learning basics and foundations of math, it's pretty general. But as they move up, some courses, they cover topics in different orders, some school districts. So it all varies a little bit on what they cover and what they don't cover.
Yeah.
And so, mine's more tailored to like what the class is. So I would use their homeworks as a starting point. I built my own standard sets of questions. Like if you needed more example problems for a specific topic, I would have those, and those are broken like generically by topic, and I could show what some of those look like later on. But for me, a lot of it is going through example problems. That's what I find that most students want to see, just like example of problem solving. They're like, oh, I get it, but I don't really know. I don't know how to do this problem. I don't know how to do this problem. I don't know what the next step is.
Right.
And so a lot of examples is what I find good practice for them. And so that's mostly what I use, worksheets and things like that.
And do you ever use any worksheets that are already created that are online, or have any favorite sites that you specifically go to?
Yeah. Let's see. Depending on the level, I will use some of the problems from Khan Academy if they're really like basic and they're struggling a little bit. I use a lot of textbooks because that's very similar to what students do. So I use OpenStax.
Oh, okay.
They have a pretty good set of textbooks and problems in those textbooks. So I pull a lot from that. Apex Calculus is a pretty good calculus resource.
Okay.
So those are probably the main textbookish problems I have. For AP students, I pull AP questions from the College Board's website from previous years. So those are good samples when we're closer to prepping for the exam, like around April or May.
Yep. That's awesome. And so what have you noticed, or any specific differences that you notice when you're teaching online versus when you were like tutoring in person?
It's probably more easily for the student to be distracted a little bit. I have noticed for certain students, they may be distracted or doing something else, especially if their parents kind of force them into tutoring and it's not like their choice. So holding them accountable, that tends to happen more with the younger students. If they're college or older, then they're more disciplined. They know what they need to get done. They have a little bit more maturity. But yeah, for younger students, it's sort of keeping them on task a little bit because I'm not there watching them. Sometimes they don't have a webcam because they don't want to see, and like they may be switched off to a different tab or doing something else. It's not as obvious. So you have to pick up a lot more cues about whether or not they're really paying attention or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people are adamant about having that camera on. I'm not one of those people that's like adamant that you must have your camera on. But if I can tell that you're not doing what you need to be doing, then I'm going to be a little bit more adamant about it. I don't feel like we're on the same page right now. So to help that, but sometimes some of the people, they do want a little bit more like freedom from that, like feeling like they have to be on camera and they'd rather not be on camera. And then you got some of the little goofballs, like the little ones, they like making faces in the camera.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay, I'm right here. Hi. You're making those faces to me. Well, thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, if you could definitely show us like what some of the resources that you've created and pull that up and show us, that would be awesome. We'd love to be able to take a look at that.
Okay, so let me figure out how to share my screen. I don't use Zoom a lot, so let's see.
Now, when you use are you using like a PDF like worksheet file?
Yeah, so I put together my own set of questions intentionally so that I could so that I could pull them and I can access them. So I'm not like busy looking things up.
Yeah,
I think it's really important to like not to keep the flow of the conversation going really well. So sorry, let's see. I left a camera. I'm not sure why. Let me see. Sorry, I'm just having trouble with the video sharing. Let's see. But yeah, so what I would say is I always want my sessions to be running very smoothly, not me digging things through emails, digging things that they sent me. I like to have it right. I don't do any prep. So that's one thing for me is like, I do want to minimize because I sometimes have back-to-back students and I don't have time to prep a lot of things.
Right.
So I want things that are very easily accessible, ready for me to like look at like right away. So
I am exactly the same way. As a reading tutor, I do not do any prep for my students. I know exactly, I have like a lesson plan format in my head for each type of student and each type of reading disability or reading gap that they might have.
Right. So here's like an example of like my calculus worksheet stuff. So it's like a whole PDF I built together. And
that's great. And then you can easily just click and go.
Yeah, I click on it and I pick to the section that I have, and I have all these sample problems that I can pull up for different topics.
Yes.
And so this is what I would do if they need example problems. If they have their own homeworks or their own tests that they're prepping for, I do ask them to text or email them to me ahead of the session.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to really look at it. I might skim it if it's a really, really hard topic. But for the most part, I'm just going to like, just so I have it, be able to pull it up, like I said.
Right.
And so I use then BitPaper. So I know like a lot of people use Zoom in conjunction with BitPaper. I just use BitPaper by itself for all the video and the audio. And so the BitPaper looks like this for those who have used it before. It has the call feature to be able to start calls and join calls. You do have to log in or create a login for that. It's free though. And so it has, and when you do this, your video will show up here. And when the student, you'll get a noise when the student joins. And so I just do all of the audio and video integrated onto the BitPaper. It's through the web browser. Chrome's the best that they recommend that you use. And so you use this link here. And so then I have my if you guys know, I have a writing tablet and stylus. So I can write on here very easily. Right. So if I'm writing equations or things like that. And then I want to be able to pull up problems very quickly. And so one of the things I do is use the snipping tool.
Yes.
I'll show you the tool if those of you haven't used it before. It looks like this. And if you do it by hand, you can do this. You can do a rectangular snip and it will just grab a region. It will then, you can do Control-C to copy it, and then you can paste it into BitPaper like this. And so then it just shows up here, and then the student can see it at the same time. And then you can resize it if it's a little bit too small and do it accordingly. Now, for me, I shortcut this. Like my tablet has like buttons on there. And so I don't need to open the snipping tool directly. I just push a button, it will activate it. And then I do that, and then I push another button to paste. And so I'm very quick about putting problems in because I want the flow to be very, very smooth. I don't want people waiting for me to do something or things like that. So I make that part work as quickly as possible, as seamless, to make the time most efficient because they're, it's their time. It's not cheap and if they're just waiting on me to do something. And then from this point on, I would say like, well, tell me how you would do this problem, or how would you approach this problem, or how would you look at it? They may write. They maybe they don't have the ability to write on the screen. I ask them to dictate it to me, to say like what steps, and I write for them. So I might say, well, they're asking you to write this, and they're asking me to do, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just writing exactly what they say. And that's the way I can get back to that problem of not seeing their handwriting, is if they just dictate to me, I just do the writing for them.
Yep.
And then I write it out, and then it just goes to the usual. I spot mistakes. I'd be like, okay, well, what about this part here? You maybe made a mistake, or are you thinking about that right? And so that's how I identify issues with their problem-solving approaches, how they're thinking about it wrong or incorrectly. And that's where the tutoring aspect comes in, where I can identify their problem and fix it. And so then we just move on to like that, problem after problem, until it makes sense. Until the session's over. BitPaper has the ability to, add new pages, right? So you can look at previous ones and save them, and like that. So you can see different whiteboards. You might not be able to see it because I think my camera is blocking it, but on the right side over here, you can switch between the different pages. And then we just do problem after problem like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's mostly. There's a few times I have to screen share, and BitPaper has the ability to screen share. Zoom does too. An example might be, here's another resource I would use, is sometimes students don't know how to use the calculator correctly, because when they're doing more advanced math, they need to know how to do derivatives or integrals or do some statistic stuff. And so I use a virtual, you guys will be able to see this directly, but I have to share my screen for this. This is a statistics students I was working with earlier or yesterday. And so this is an emulated version of the TI calculator that they might use. Very similar, very common calculator that a student will use. And I can walk them through to be like, okay, I'm not sure how to do a specific kind of statistics test or to plot something. I can walk them through and tell them which buttons to press and everything like that. So it emulates a calculator that they can see.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I love it. Ah, so cool, so cool. We've got Nuwan here, who he said he teaches math and physics. He says this is great info. Awesome. So if you guys are liking this info, you know what that means. I'm going to ask you to hit that like and that subscribe. Which is awesome. And Ginger, I am going to get into, I do have a sample video. I will send it to you so you can see what a reading session, because I know you're a reading tutor, a reading session looks like. I'm going to give you a snippet of it so you can kind of see like the cadence of it and how it flows and goes. It's 5 minutes, so that's not boring to people, but we'll get more into that, because I am actually going to be hosting you guys a webinar in, I'm going to get you a link for those of you who want to know how I close the reading gap a full year with 8 to 12 hours of instruction. I'm going to be sharing that on that webinar. And so you can definitely join me to learn more about that if that's something that you've been interested. Any other amazing tools like this that you use with your tutoring students?
That's the most of it. Like I said, like there's some, I have it set up to where they can text me. What mostly is facilitating the ease of communication. So sometimes students, like, they don't, a lot of these kids, they don't use email anymore. They like to text me. Even texting's old. They use WhatsApp or whatever, but they like to take a picture on their camera and send it to me. So having an easy way to have those messages sent to my computer is important, because then I can grab what they send me on, texting me, and then I can pull it onto the bit paper here.
Yeah.
So I have my text messages set up to where I can get them on my computer. And so I can pull the images directly, and again, just be able to put them in. So if a student's like, hey, I have a new problem, they take a picture of it, they text it to me, and then I can immediately pull it onto the bit paper, just like I did with the PDFs, but with something they send. And so I would say the focus for me is always just try to make it very streamlined, very simple for them to send me things. You don't want the online stuff to be a barrier. If you really want to convince someone to go with the online, you want it to be smooth, easy, painless, very pleasant experience that they're like, okay, this is great. I didn't suffer through any problem with it. And it takes some trial and error. It's okay if for some sessions, I learned this over time. So it's more of a, I had a session where it was kind of painful to get an image sent to me or a problem sent to me. And then I worked on streamlining that to make that more efficient.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So if you guys have any math physics problems or questions specifically about teaching math, bring that on in, and we're going to revisit all of these questions at the end, so that we can make sure that we get some good equal access here into learning about how to teach some of the other topics as well. So we have Fernando here, and Fernando, one of the topics that he teaches is science. Hey, Fernando.
Hi, everyone. Well, yes, thank you for inviting me. And yes, I do tutor science, but specifically physics. So, I mean, a lot of, what I do for my tutoring overlaps with what Alan said.
Yeah.
Maybe there's just a few different things, but most of all is about going over the problems a particular student have,
Yeah.
Some of them, I've had students like first semester at the university where I had also senior students, with very tough questions. But most of my students are college students at this level. I've had some high school students as well because of the AP courses. So, but yeah, most of my tutoring is physics. I do tutor math as well, but I try to focus, narrow down so that I can provide, a very specialized and top quality tutoring, but I don't know where to start.
That's okay. Well, let's start with, where are you from, Fernando?
Well, okay. I am Venezuelan born. Right now, I'm Skyping from Spring, Texas. However, you will find me next week in Lima, Peru. And after that, I don't know. I just tend to move a lot because I want to do like so many things. And that's the number one reason that led me to discover online tutoring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you like to be able to travel.
I like to be able to travel, and I love physics, and I love to teach it. And I started as an in-person tutor for Lone Star College here in in Conroe, Texas, and I really liked it, So, but then there came a time where I had to make a hard choice. I mean, like I wanted to do something that involved me going away, but I also wanted to keep tutoring. So that was like a struggle I had, and by that time I didn't know online tutoring was a thing. And then doing a little bit of brainstorming, that's when I kind of discovered
Yeah.
and I'm really happy that I did. I think online tutoring, I mean, when it's well delivered, it's even better than in-person tutoring, because in-person tutoring, you do have some shortcomings, like as Alan mentioned, some of them. There's the thing about the traffic. There's the thing as, do you as a tutor go to your tutee's place, or do you have them come to you? There's always that question. And at least here in Texas, well, at least in this area where I live, it's a good 30 minutes to get to the closest thing where you want to go. So, I mean, it's not a viable business model if you like start traveling to people's house, unless you start charging a ton of money, which not a lot of people have. So, I mean, for me, that's why online tutoring, like, that was the first thing. And well, the second is the first one was being able to tutor remotely, like whenever. And then there's the thing about resources. I can't tell you how many times I was tutoring at this college, and they just forgot the homeworks. They don't have them. Or, yeah, I had it in my phone, but my phone died. Or we are in the middle of tutoring and then they have to go because they have, life comes up, and then it's like, oh no, then I have to wait until next week because you don't tutor like in between. It's like, no, you will have to come to next week. So with online tutoring, we are able to schedule like easier and shorter sessions. You don't have to commit like for long sessions. And I mean, it's easier to keep track of everything. In my opinion, at least.
So what was the hardest thing for you when you were switching kind of from like that in-person tutoring to the online tutoring?
I would say it's a mindset, really, because a lot of us think, I have to confess, I started thinking that online tutoring would be like some spin-off of in-person tutoring, something that maybe it's not good as, but at least it's something. And since then, I've changed my mentality of, it's not that online tutoring can be as good as in-person tutoring, it's that people have not discovered yet. So that's that's how I take it now, because I don't think online tutoring has like anything to prove like with in-person tutoring. It's just different.
Right.
It's just different. And as I mentioned, if you deliver it correctly, it can be even better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like you said, it's not a cheaper version of tutoring. No. Do you know what I mean? Like you can actually charge more for your online services without all the travel, which is really cool. So you can be making money during the times that you would be traveling before, which you couldn't do before. And so it like you mentioned, it's, I think, a really strong business model to do it that way. And so what was one of the things that you kind of feared the most about making this switch?
That people are not looking into it, that they don't want to, that they prefer, that they are stubborn into in-person tutoring. They don't think about, they're not looking for that. But then I thought, that must be false, because, we do enjoy already a lot of the convenience of online everything, online shopping, online bookings, online banking. And I think that people just need to discover it,
Yeah. I completely agree with you. And then once they discover it, they're sold like immediately. They're like, oh, this is awesome. Like I don't have to drive anywhere. I mean, I could be working, my kid could be doing their tutoring, like, and I don't have to drive them anywhere.
Yeah, that's the other thing, it's safer for everybody also, because I always got the feeling when I was tutoring in person. I used to go to people's houses, because I was like, I really need to try this. I didn't have like a suitable space to receive people, so I just decided to go. And every time that was like the first time of me going there, I always had this sensation of, where am I going to? It's like, I don't know. It's not nice. I mean, given all of the things that you see in TV and stuff like that, you kind of like, at least you get a little bit concerned. Unfortunately, I didn't have anything like weird or anything going on. Everything went like so smoothly. And I actually have to say that, my online tutoring has been so far so good. And it's like, it's scary good because I haven't had like a bad experience yet. Maybe I'm too new, but I don't know. It's been just awesome till now.
So what does a session look like when you're tutoring physics? What does a typical session look like for you?
Okay, very similar to what Alan said, really. I mean, I try to work out with the problems that the student have at hand so that we don't get like distracted. Like most of them, they are very goal oriented and they know what they have to do. And so we just go over them. So we go, like I started my online tutoring with some online platforms. And I'm very recently starting to break apart from that and working like on my own, like with beat paper and all of that. So I'm still learning about it, but through Ysand, which was the particular one that I started, I will contact them. Well, they will contact me first. And then I will tell them, okay, tell me about the problems that you're having. What's your course? What's the topics? Why do you think you're struggling with this? Then they send me some homework problems or test prep or any other material. Then I have a look at it. And because the flux of students that I have is still not so big, I do take the time like to prep, because even though I'm familiar with the material, it is something else to try to teach it so that everybody else understands. It's each person has a different learning process, and I have to kind of adapt into that. And so far that has worked for me. And I see that the more that I tutor, the less time I need to prep, because it becomes routine, especially if I tutor the same topics. Now, some of I've had students ask me about senior level physics major courses. And for that, yes, I do have to take my time. But I do it also because, it's fun. I love physics. And, I'm actually trying to convince myself that students at a higher level, like senior and junior levels, are actually looking for this, because it's fun. I want to do that. I want to cater those people as well. So
yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And if you guys have any specific questions about, tutoring, physics, science, math online, remember to put those questions on in here so that we can make sure that we address those. Now, we also have Suzanne Davis in the house today. And Suzanne is an academic writing tutor, if you guys are not aware already. And Suzanne has a very interesting experience, because she actually started tutoring when she was tutoring at the college level. And so she was actually tutoring in a tutoring center for a while, right?
Right. Well, I only did that piece in college. When I started working, I would do a lot of one-on-one office hour work, which is basically like tutoring.
Yeah, it is.
It is, but I had shorter amounts of time to work with students. Office hours aren't very long, and so
right,
you have to be really quick.
True, because would you have lots of students that would be coming on in during office hours?
Well, I set it up so the student. I think I just froze.
Yep, you did.
I don't know what happened.
You know what? Sometimes what I do is I hit stop video and then I turn my video back on, and then sometimes I'm magically like then moving again. So you guys, this is live TV. You never know what's gonna happen. Funny thing is, Suzanne's been here the whole time. She hasn't frozen at all. And now that it's her turn, she froze. Absolutely. Just the way it sometimes goes when it comes to this stuff. Crazy. So why don't I chat real quick with you guys about like what the reading tutoring aspect looks like and how I've organized it, because with reading it's a little bit different. Like it's not like the kids don't have like reading homework and reading problems that they are struggling with, right? Usually the problem is that they are struggling with some aspect of reading, and it's my job to be able to figure out what is that aspect that they're specifically struggling with, so that I can close the gap in that area. So I always start off by trying to find out with my assessment, where am I starting? What is my starting data? I need to know that so that I can say, okay, they're at a first grade reading level, they're in fourth grade. Got it. Sometimes I find out that really the problem is that they are on grade level when it comes to fiction, but they're not when it comes to nonfiction. And so I have different lesson plan formats set up in my mind of what are the activities that I'm going to do with each of my students during a session. So based off that assessment, I plug and play. And so if, let's say I have a student that is struggling with fluency, like they're just a really slow, choppy reader, then I'm going to organize my session by having the first thing I'm going to do are like PowerPoints with sight words on them so that they're reading those quickly. They're either words from Fry's list or they are words from their reading that they've been struggling with that have gotten added onto that list. And then from there, I'm going to have them read a fluency passage. And usually my fluency passages are about 2 to 3 levels lower than where they currently are at, so that they have the ability to be able to read it fluently, right? If I put them in text that is too hard, they're obviously going to be slower and more choppy as we go. But if I can start with text that's a little bit easier, they can feel more confident and increase their speed as they continue to do some repeated readings. And then we'll go right on into our regular reading at their instructional level of a specific book. And I use Res Kids when I'm doing that. And so let me show you guys real quick what that looks like. I'm going to show you, I've got all of like their PowerPoints and all that kind of stuff just kind of saved inside of a tool called OneDrive. It's all saved on my computer, but if I were ever to switch computers, I would have direct access to it. And so that makes it nice if I'm ever going to be working with kids and for whatever reason, I don't have access to my computer. Life happens, right? Things happen. I can still access all of my resources and my tools, which is fabulous. So I'm going to just share my screen here so you guys can see what that would look like. This happens to be the 900 words that kids need to be able to read. And if kids are able to read words at, if they're able to read the first 1,000 words, it's going to really set them up for success. So these are the words that I focus on right off the beginning for them to work on. So here are some of the words that they are working on. I have one of my students who's added some sentences on into there. So I start off with those, and then I'll move into, like I mentioned before, like a fluency passage. So here's an example of a fluency passage that I would have them work on in. And then from there, we go right on into working inside of Kids A to Z. And I'm able to have books right at their level. And they can even access these books and read these books when they are in between sessions, which is really nice, because if they then have that opportunity to be able to have some reading that's not too hard. Lots of parents want to always put their kids in reading that's too hard because they don't understand the different levels of reading that I can read. Like, let's say I can read a 4th grade book really, really well, but put me in a 5th grade book and now I'm going to stumble and fall apart. So I want to put them in text that is just right. And so that's constantly what I'm doing. So here's an example of Annalena, and I'm going to just move on in here to show you guys how easy this is. All I have to do for Annalena is click on Reading Room, and then I can click on the next button, which is the leveled books. And as soon as I hit leveled books, all of the books that are at their level come on up for us to be able to choose from. I usually only give my kids like 3 or 4 choices of books. And then we spend most of our time reading. One of the biggest things that I noticed when I was in the school system was that the amount of time that kids actually spend reading and getting feedback on their reading was very low. They spent a lot of time on skill and drill. They spent a lot of time on maybe listening to books or learning a reading comprehension strategy or doing word work or doing all of these isolated skills, but not actually applying them inside of reading. And so much of the time that I spend with my students is spent on the reading. And so I'll come on in here and I've got now my book. Let's say we chose coral reefs. And then I really engaged the child into creating questions. And I have them do that through the table of contents. And so this one already has like 2 that are already questions, but then we write down those questions on OneNote. So I use a OneNote tool here where I'm able to organize each of my students. You'll notice, I'm gonna move my bar down for a second here. You'll notice that I have each of my students at the top and then all along the side here. So I can open them on up and I can create then a brand new page. I can write the title of the book on here. So we've got Underwater Community, let's say. I don't remember if that was the name of the book or not, but then I recreate our questions. And as we're reading, we write down the answers. Also, as they're reading, I am giving them feedback on their reading. I don't give them feedback on absolutely everything because I feel like that would be way too overwhelming for me to do that to them. Be like, okay, you need to stop at the periods. You need to do this. You need to do that. What's that word? Try to fix it. I try to stay focused on one skill per page that I'm focusing on. So I might say something like, after they read something, did that make sense? And if they had read a word as like gobbledygook, which they do a lot, they might say, no, there was one word I didn't know on there. Great, let's take a look at it. Which one caused you problems? They can circle it. So there's an annotate feature on side of Zoom that allows them to write on my screen. And so then they can just circle the word that was gobbledygook for them. And then we can figure it out. Is there a word I have to memorize or is a word that I can figure out by using, I teach a strategy called spot and dot where they'll be able to figure out the word and we come up with a solution. Or maybe it's a concept or an idea that they're struggling with. Then we can embellish on that and talk about it and really use those teachable moments. And that's what I love about tutoring the most is being able to really hone on in to those teachable moments and be able to help kids succeed because I don't have to wait until next week to be able to get materials together to be able to help you with this. I love it. Like everything is like right there at the tip of my finger, any resource that I need. I can pull it on up and you're going to get to know what resources those are for you as time goes on. And I only have a couple that I'm constantly pulling out from my backpack. So it's not like I have to remember like 50 different websites that I'm going to pull up or 5,000 different documents that I'm going to use in each situation. I really only have like 3 or 4 resources that I'm using at a time that I'm pulling on into the lesson and that I know where to pull it in because I kind of have that lesson plan, like I mentioned before, inside of my head for each of my students that is struggling in the areas that they're struggling. So that's a little bit about the reading tutoring and how I go and teach that aspect of it. So again, any questions you guys have about like reading tutoring and all that kind of stuff, definitely add those on in there. I would love to be able to share more information, but I do also have that webinar that I talked about that I'm going to be hosting next week on Tuesday, where you're going to get to learn all about how I'm able to close the gap a full year with 8 to 12 hours of instruction. So a lot of people will ask me the question, what does that mean? What do you mean when you say that? Well, 1 year means like, let's say that you're in 4th grade, but you're reading in a 3rd grade level. Then it would take me between 8 to 12 hours of instruction to close the gap 1 full year for you. And then I'll have people who say, but I don't understand how you are able to do that. How do you know? I have tracked data over the years to be able to determine if my students, I've tracked, do they have any kind of learning disability, dyslexia, or anything like that? And for my kiddos that do, they tend to close the reading gap a full year with like the 12 hours of instruction. And then my kids that do not have any kind of learning disability, maybe they switch schools, or maybe they don't do a lot of reading in their home, or maybe they have had poor instruction, or maybe they had like a first year teacher, you know, and the first year teacher didn't realize the child had a learning disability or was struggling or anything like that. And so they didn't have that extra help that they needed. Those types of kids, they're going to be closer to the 8 hours that they need for me to be able to close the gap a full year. So that's how, you know, it was over time that I made that observation, that I was able to do that. And that's what I teach other tutors how to do as well. I didn't know if I'd be able to do it in the beginning, if I'd be able to help people close the gap so quickly. I knew how to do it myself, but I didn't know if I could teach it to others. And as soon as I created the Reading Interventionist program, I found out very quickly that yes, I can help other teachers learn the same thing, and other tutors how to learn the same thing and how to apply it. So it's not that I just have this like magical tendency, like I'm a magician that can just do this amazing thing. It really does come down to best practices and utilizing what research has shown us over the years. Well, now we've got Suzanne Davis. She is back in the house here to talk about writing. Hello, Suzanne.
Hi, I'm sorry about that, everyone. My computer started just updating in the middle. I had to try and click it off, and yeah, so I'm sorry about that, everyone.
That is totally okay. You know what? It's all about like, this is exactly the way tutoring goes in our lessons too. Like you never know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, but you have to think quick on your feet, right? Like, and be like, okay, so this didn't work exactly the way I thought. What am I going to do now?
Yes.
And if you have that skill to be able to do that, you're going to be great at online tutoring. All right, Suzanne. So we were chatting about how you were helping people like one-on-one when you were in the university setting, when you were going through university, and then when you were teaching at the university, you were working with people one-on-one. You didn't have a lot of time to be able to work with them when you had the open office hours. And so where would those kids go when they were done working? Like they'd come for the extra help. Would they seek out other services?
They could have. I taught some writing tutors at the writing center how to tutor, because I mostly worked with international students, how to tutor writing to international students, because it's not quite the same thing. There's similarities, but it's a little bit different. And so they could go for that. And I was their regular teacher.
Yeah.
Classroom. So the way I taught writing, I could give them a lot of feedback in the classroom as I was working with them. But still, I felt like I could make the biggest difference working either in small groups or one-on-one with students.
Yeah.
Because a lot of writing students, they need feedback.
Right.
They're going through the writing process. And in a big classroom, it's harder to give really valuable feedback. You can teach people how to do peer feedback and oversee it a little bit, but
right. But then they're not getting that highly educatable. Okay, that's totally not the word that I wanted to use. Can we do like a retake? Oh no, this is
no.
Darn. They're not getting, you're highly qualified to be able to give them feedback. They're not getting that same quality of feedback from you specifically when they do that. That's what I wanted to say the first time. So that's what you all heard, right? All right, cool. So writing, I have found personally for me, writing online and working with kids writing online is such a tricky task, but you've really created some amazing ways of being able to help people with their writing. So how do you go about that online?
Okay, well, the first thing to consider with writing is that it's really writing across the curriculum. So I find that a lot of it is student directed. Now I may have a student who's going through an English class or a writing class, but I may also have a student who's struggling with writing and in nursing or in computer science. And so I have to really be able to adapt the writing process specifically to the types of writing they're doing.
Yeah.
So that I find is the biggest challenge as far as preparation. because I mostly use Google Docs a lot for communication for us working on a draft. And that way we can be writing together. I can be giving immediate feedback, and it's a way to continue the learning outside of the classroom. So if they send something to me in the week, I can look at it quickly on that Google Docs share link and then make a couple comments.
Right.
But yeah, it's a lot of being flexible, but I also have a very organized way of designing my lessons. So I always start off with a tutoring agenda. And it's just a few bullet points. And then I have a section for next steps at the end that they can be working on. But I start off always with them writing. So a lot of times it's just a quick 5 to 7 minute free writing activity or brainstorming activity. And it always relates to the type of writing that they're doing or their own interests. I try and make it not just a general writing activity, but something that's going to be really relevant and also engaging to them.
Yeah.
And then we work on a lot of times these longer term projects that they may have, such as, it might be somebody who wants to write a personal statement for school or a graduate personal statement, or it might be they're in a class where they're writing a long-term research paper where all their papers are along a certain topic. And so that's really the big part of what we do in our sessions.
That's awesome. And what I'm kind of hearing from all of you guys, it's very student driven. So it's all about the specific needs of that student that you guys are meeting. And so, sometimes it's not like a lesson plan that you have in the classroom to teach A, B, and C, but it's based off of what are they presenting to you? What problems are they showing? How can you guide them into being able to successfully solve it or figure it out independently?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I have certain sites that I go to. I have resources that I've created. I give all of my students a personal Google Classroom.
Oh, great.
So there's different topics in there, like resources on revising and editing and videos on how to use the different tools. And then just ones for, writing activities that they can do, like free writing, ones for writing particular essays. And then I create the topics that are relevant to the projects they're doing. Or what they're studying. And I divide those up. And so all of the materials for each class goes into those different project folders that they use along with the agendas.
Yeah.
And it's really handy for a lot of the students because they have this one place. And I've shown them how to use something, like if they're looking for a research article, I've shown them how to use this different website where they can find journal articles and things like that. And then they can go on and do it on their own. So a lot of it is being really, really organized, and then just knowing really the types of things that I'm going to use for a writing lesson.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really helpful. So with the Google Classrooms, because they've just opened this up, I think in the past year or two, where anybody now could create a Google Classroom.
Yeah.
How do you go about that process of using the Google Classroom? Are they able to communicate with you throughout the week using the Google Classroom as well?
They are, because there's a comments section. Well, it's not called comments, or maybe it is called comments, but there's really 3 things. There's the stream, which is, it gives updates as to every time somebody's uploaded, and you can communicate back and forth with questions and things like that. Then there's the classwork, and that's where I've organized things into sections for them and all of those resources. And then that 3rd section is just for student enrollment and things like that.
Yeah.
So it is really useful. Anyone with a Google account can use it. So it's free. You just need a Google account.
Yeah. And you're able to store videos inside of there. So do the videos have to be on YouTube, or can you upload your own videos into the Google Classroom?
You probably could upload your videos, but I don't know how much space you would have.
Okay. That is good to know.
Yes. So I usually put them on YouTube, and you can put them so that they're unlisted if you don't want them to be found. But a lot of the ones that I've created, they're part of my YouTube channel anyway.
Right, right. And that's going to just increase your engagement of other people being able to find you, right?
Right. You know, and I have a lot of things in there, like maybe I've written a blog post with an infographic on a particular topic, and those things go in there too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fantastic. So yeah, Ginger is excited to know about Google Classroom. She's using it in her new school that she's going to be working in. So
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's a video you and I did on using Google Classroom on
There
your YouTube
is.
channel.
Yeah, there sure is. And Kathy was just actually wondering, she's like, what does the Google Classroom look like? Well, Kathy, I will send you a link. Do you want to show us real quick what it looks like?
Yes, let me just open it up and I'll share the screen. Okay, this
what
is
I'm going to do as well while you're sharing the screen, I'll just let you guys know if you're already in the Ultimate Support Group for Online Tutors on Facebook. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share that link for the Google Classroom video that Suzanne and I did with you guys inside of there. I'm going to share the video where I show like a lesson, a reading lesson with a student who's struggling with fluency. I'm going to share that video with you guys inside of there. So if you have not joined us over in that Facebook group, then definitely join us. It's a free group. You just type in Ultimate Support Group for Online Tutors, and I will hit accept. I will make sure that I accept people today into that group, and you'll be able to access those videos.
Okay. All right. So this is Google Classroom. I forgot there's that 4th section grades. I never use it because I'm a tutor and I don't grade people. But if your school is going to be using it, then you'll be using grades. But this is just the stream that I was talking about. And this is a generic classroom that I created. You can clone classrooms. And so I have a generic one that I clone, and then I start making them more specific to students.
Awesome.
Your classwork is really the heart of Google Classroom. So here, this is the generic one. So I have writing advice and resources, revising, essay writing, and then with the ones that, with each student, it would start getting different sections that relate to them.
Mm-hmm.
You can add your resources by pressing create. So you'll see here, there's different choices. You can assign something. You can give a quiz assignment. You could just ask a question. A lot of times the way I upload something is material, or you could even reuse something. So I'm just going to click on material, and you would write the title for it. You would put it in a particular topic. So those are the headings that I just had in the classroom. So we'll put this in essay writing. And then these are the 4 ways you can upload a material. So it can be an attachment. If you create something in Google Drive, then you can just move it from your Google Drive into this. You'll automatically get a classroom folder. And so what I do with a lot of my materials, I just create them in Google Docs. Mm-hmm. And then I upload them here by using Google Drive. You'll see this video one. Mm-hmm. And that's YouTube.
Yep.
You can do the video search. So, Joanne Kaminski. And let's see. Yep. So a bunch of your videos would come up.
Yeah, there's a few of them.
Oh yeah, just a few. And you would press on one of those, and that would link to that video so that the video shows up in the Google Classroom. If you know the specific URL, you can just type that in, and then it will link. So it's really a great way to organize things. My students go into these all the time on their own, because they're working on something and they want to share it with me. It's a really neat thing to have. I love it for organization. There's other resources I use, like I have special tools that I use when I want students to try and revise something. I have special research sites. There's a writing site that I really recommend for learning about different types of academic writing, and that's Purdue Online Writing Lab. And so I have a link to that. They do grammar, all kinds of different writing. So that's a resource I've just always used with college students.
Yeah.
And that's in Google Classroom. I have that all set up for them. It's great, but
That's
a lot of it is just things that I create off of what their interests are and what they're doing in class.
No, when you were sharing those resources before that you've pre-created for them in there, Kathy's wondering if you wrote all those articles and stuff yourself.
The first section, they were book chapters out of a book that I use, Writing Down the Bones. And so those were just a few of the chapters. So that's not something I created myself. In a regular Google Classroom, all of the free writing and writing activities I create in Google and then add into there. That one section on revising that I just went through quickly, those were my videos on how to use something, and then links to those websites. And some other things under essay writing, they're materials that were from my blog that I created, or just other things I've uploaded and created for them.
So it's really a combination.
It's a mix.
It's a mix. You can use resources, other people's resources that you have permission to be able to use. And then you can also use your own stuff and past content. And really you're organizing that content in a manageable way for each of your students to be able to access on their own.
Exactly. The more you use Google Classroom, like those are just the getting started things. It really becomes the student's classroom with all these materials that are more specialized for them.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you guys are amazing. I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us and share what it looks like to specifically tutor in the area that you tutor. Because I know one of the things that people, they struggle with in the beginning is like, well, how do I even tutor online? You know, like how do I even go about that process? What does it look like? So you guys gave them a really good glimpse of what that specifically looks like. And I appreciate that. You guys, we need to give them a big boom cha. So if you can find that fist in the fireworks, that's awesome. You boom cha in there, and I'm going to boom cha you guys right here. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3, boom, sha.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you for having us, Joanne.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I always learn so much. I'm like already like, I'm like taking notes over here. I'm like, oh, I never knew about that calculator. I'm totally taking notes on that. Not that I would know how to use it, but it's cool. And then I was like, oh, let's do this over here. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, awesome. I love the open stacks. All free resources. Awesome. Check it out, you guys. Google Classroom. I mean, there are so many resources at the tips of our fingers, you guys. That's going to make doing what you love doing even better. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.